Hello, everybody, and welcome to another segment of Between the Lines Book Talk. And today it's just me. Michelle and Rhonda are off doing other things. We decided to somewhat break up and talk to some great authors in lieu of what's going on, what will be going on the first week of October, which is called Virtual Fantasy Con. And we did this last year, and we had a huge following. It was so much fun. We did this all online on Facebook, and we had over 300 authors. We had artists. We had bloggers. We just had so much fun. So we're going to do it again this year. And today we just have a couple of really great fantasy authors. And so we're going to chat with them today and find out a little bit about them and a little bit about their book and entice you guys to hopefully check them out and read their book and leave them a great review. Because, we do thrive off of our reviews. So Scott and Tom, welcome to Between the Lines Book Talk, and we're happy to have you. And so we're just going to start out. Let's start out with Scott. And just give us a little bit about yourself and the book today that you brought to talk about.
All right. Well, thanks for having me here. And first, I want to say I was at the FantasyCon last year as a visitor. It was amazing. It was super fun. I'm really looking forward to the next one. For myself, I've been dabbling in creative writing my whole life. And just recently, I decided to try to be a little more serious than dabbling. And I had an idea that I had been kind of toying around, had been brewing for a while. And I had a little bit of, let's say, creative input from some outside sources that really helped to motivate me. And I ended up writing 2 books in a year. And this is the first one. The second one is finishing up final editing and should be published soon. Incidentally, I've already started the third one, but I'm trying to finish the second one before I get to the third one. And that's basically what I'm here to do, is to kind of talk about my debut novel and hopefully generate some interest.
Wow. So you did some channeling, did you?
Yeah, I actually did something that I'd never done before, and I had some outside consultation, if you want to call it that. Okay. And that gave me some insight into some aspects of what I was trying to write that I had no firsthand experience with. But this individual that helped me tremendously, she does have a lot of firsthand experience in some of these things. And that gave me a lot of insight, allowed me to do some things that I felt like were more realistic in the presentation of the story.
Well, great. Why don't you tell the listeners the title of your book? Did you bring a copy with you?
I did.
Great.
Dance of the Butterfly.
Awesome.
And I've said to a few people, and we had a release party recently, the title of the book is actually an Easter egg. And I'm waiting for someone to guess what it means. And some people on the release party came very close to figuring it out, but they didn't quite get it. And I did give a couple of hints, and I'm just kind of curious how long it's going to take before someone jumps in and realizes what the Easter egg is. But the book is urban fantasy, but it's a slow burn. It reads like a contemporary fiction crime thriller, and the urban fantasy part of it is hinted at. I allude to it. I wanted to kind of bring it out slowly so that someone reading it could possibly think, yeah, this could really be happening. I wanted to give it a somewhat of a quasi-realistic framework.
Yeah, I think a lot of us fantasy writers today, we really do strive to make our stories believable. And I do that too. And it's a lot of fun, and it can be a little bit disconcerting at times. So wonderful. Okay, well that gives us some insight, and we will go to our next author, and that is Tom. So Tom, why don't you do the same? Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit of your book. And I know you just changed your book covers, and I thought your other covers were fantastic. So I'm really curious to see your new covers.
Well, my name's Tom Falwell. I'm 65 years old, and I have been a software developer for many years, working on the internet. And I recently retired from that field and decided to take up writing. I've always been fascinated by J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and other authors like that, and how they build worlds and everything. And so I wanted to do the same thing. I always read those like, I wish I'd done that. So now I'm doing it. So I created the world that I have set the Rangers of Lorien series in. I'm working to continuously develop that world with all kinds of political, economical, racial tensions, everything going on that we can think of. And I am just now finishing, I just got finished getting the beta copy for my beta readers of the third book, which will finish the trilogy that I've been writing. I don't have copies of the books with the new covers yet, but I did make myself some pictures so I could show them. If my fingers will work on the paper there. There we go. The first book was Whisper in the Shadows. That's this one here. And I you may have liked the old covers, but I really like the new covers. And the second book was Where Shadows Fall, and that's this one here. And I have my paperbacks on order, but they're not here yet. And the third book I'm just now finishing up that I hope will be released by Thanksgiving will be The Shadow of Narworm, and it will complete the trilogy of the Rangers of Lorien, although I don't think that'll end the series. I may have more stories set in that same world later on, maybe with the same characters, but as I finish this trilogy, I'm going to kind of switch gears and do something a little different for a change. But I'm just excited to get it all done and get it out there. And what I can tell you is it's heroic fantasy adventure. I'm an action adventure fan through and through, and I like a lot of action, a lot of heroic adventure going on, and that's what all my books are about.
Well, great. You know, it just sounds like both of you two guys have been really prolific. I mean, you just hit the ground running. You know, I did that with my Dragon Horse. I got the first two books out. Actually, wrote the first one, and it was like, I can't write a sequel to this book, and I don't know. You know, it took so much out of my energy, and I was so close to the story, and it was like, how am I going to do this? Well, people started reading, and it's like, oh, I need another book of this. You need to continue. So you guys, it just sounds like you guys just hit the ground running. You just started writing, and yeah, which is good. I mean, that's what our readers, you know, the readers are just as soon be able to read the next story and the next story instead of waiting 5 years, you know. So that's a good thing, readers. I mean, these guys got their stories all wrapped up for you. So let's go around now, and I want to ask you guys, was there anything special or anything interesting that inspired your stories? I mean, you must have some inspiration there for you to write the amount of writing that you've been doing. So either one of you start. Go ahead. Alphabetically or...
All right. Well, mine started out from a dream. And I have a lot of that in many of the books that I do. They come from dreams that I have. So I had this one dream, and it was very poignant, very personal. And I wrote that part out, and then it sat for quite a while. And so even though I was able to churn out 2 books in a year, the initial idea did simmer and sit for some time and then took a lot of work. And I wasn't sure anything was going to happen with it. And then I met this person that I mentioned before that helped me with a lot of input into the realism of it. And with her input, it just really inspired me and made me want to keep going and keep going. And she was reading it as I was writing it and giving me pointers and giving me feedback. And it felt like having someone there all the time to help me keep going. And that really helped. As I said earlier, I've never done anything like that. It was just really, really interesting for me to have that sort of organic concept going. Other than that, I just really like urban fantasy. And this was my attempt to put forward a story that I had that felt like the kind of urban fantasy book that I wanted to read. So that's why I did it.
Yeah. You know, and I hear that from so many authors too, that, you know, they read so much in their genre that they start going, you know, there's something missing, and I really, you know, I'm just going to write this book that I really want to read myself, you know. So I know I've done it myself too. So yeah, that's amazing. Okay, Tom, I guess it's your time.
Okay, well, the funny thing is, the main character of my books, Barrick the Ranger, was created back in the late 1980s for a comic book. And me and my brother tried to publish a comic book. We got 3 issues out before we went belly under, but that character was created for that comic book, and he's always been with me, and I like to play online, multiplayer online games and stuff. And every game I ever play, the first character I create is Barrick. I always create a character named Barrick. Even in Star Wars, I have a Barrick that's a Jedi Knight, you know. So I just was thinking about him, and it's funny how her stories are so similar, because I dream about my books too. And I had a female friend helping me, encouraging me to write, so we had a lot in common there. But I wanted to write something with Barrick, and I had just got through watching all of the Lord of the Rings movies, and I had already read the books I don't know how many times, so it was I was just kind of inspired to create a world around that character, Barrick. He was a ranger, so it just kind of came into the Rangers of Lorien, and it's a long story. I make up all my names, but usually I just use a name generator and find stuff that sounds right and then alter it a little to make it fit. So, but Barrick has just always been a part of me, and as I sat down and started writing it, it was like Barrick was telling me what to write. I had no idea where it was going to go, and he just took off with it. And so now I'm having written the 3rd book now, and to the point that it's not published yet, but having actually completed that story, it's amazing how it all came. It was like I was reading it myself, not writing it, because I was thrilled to death to see the ending of my own story. So it was pretty exciting.
Well, you know, it's interesting that both of you talk about dreams, you know, because a lot of us fantasy authors, you know, we do write from what we dream about, or, you know, like Tolkien, you know, I think it was Tolkien that said that he wrote about the forgotten past, and you know, when he writes about Middle Earth and all that stuff, you know, there's always the theories that, you know, this all really happened somewhere at some point in time, and a lot of us were there, you know, and when I watch Lord of the Rings, I mean, I cry through the whole thing. It's like, I was there, I just know I was there, you know, and you know, so I'm just curious, you know, a lot of what I write, I almost get to the point where I'm so familiar with it that it's almost like I've actually lived that, you know. And I don't know if any of you, you know, think that if you go into a past, you've lived different lifetimes, or, you know, do you think some of these characters are, you know, part of you from today or yesterday or tomorrow?
Well, my answer isn't going to be fair. My characters are very much based on people that I know right now. So I'm not channeling a past life. This is very largely based on people I know.
Okay.
And I've told them, and they, of course, have told me they are flattered, have no problem with that. And the dream that initially started this whole thing was myself and my best friend, a guy I've known since elementary school, and the ghost of my father. So that right there immediately made it extremely personal. And that's how it went. And kind of like Tom said, at some point I just felt like I was just a storyteller. I was just relating something that had happened or that I was seeing happening, and I'm just telling other people about it. I'm just, letting it pass through me and writing it, and here you go.
I can feel that. I can really feel that. It's I'm absolutely sure that there are little pieces of myself and everybody else I know in my characters. Because how can I create a character without really knowing anything about them? So I'm sure that's there, but I do not intentionally try to model them after my character, model people I know into my characters. But I know that as I was writing it, I know there were some themes in my head that I wanted to get into the story, although I wasn't trying to make the story totally about them. An example is prejudice. I'm very strong against prejudice, and I wanted that in my story. So there, just in the first book, you'll see that it's dealing with that. And other themes, I guess, would be being honest and not being phony and just stuff like that. And I just like to put that stuff in there. I don't know that I'm consciously trying to get anyone to believe the way I do, but I just think it's just something that the characters want me to put in there. And like you were saying, it was like the story just told itself. And I don't know about anybody else, but when I'm writing a story and I get to some scenes, I'm sitting there crying my eyes out as I'm writing the story, because that's the way it cries. And if I'm crying, I know somebody else is going to read it and cry too. So,
it's funny because when I read my first book, Dragon Horse, I mean, I sobbed through the whole book just because a lot of it had to do with my life experiences, my journey, and journey of self-discovery. And so you kind of touched on my next question, Tom. A lot of us write, just because we just have a good story to write, or a lot of us write because we want to entertain, and there's a lot of us who write because we have a message, or there's something that we feel that we want the world to know. So what about you two guys? Did you write these books because there was a message there somewhere, or did you write just because you just had the story that you just had to tell?
well, for me, the beginning of writing the story was simply to entertain. It was my background involves a lot of dungeon mastering with Dungeons and Dragons, and I was very much into creating adventures for other players to enjoy. So that when I sat down and started actually writing a novel, that's what I had in mind, was just to entertain whoever's reading. But inevitably, things about me are going to end up in there. And I some of it I could consciously see, and then I've had some people read it and say, "Did you mean to do this?" And I had no idea that was even in there. So it's, some of it's conscious, some of it's subconscious, but that stuff's going to end up in there. And I realize that. I'm sure it happens with all of the great authors. Tolkien, I know there was a lot of his own beliefs and morals within his stories. So, but I find mainly I just want people to read it and say, "Oh, that was good." The greatest thrill I had with the first novel that I wrote, which was actually a novel called Dragon Rising, about a young female elf who had dragon blood, and she was destined to be queen. And when I finished writing that novel, the biggest thrill I got was my father, who never reads anything. He's always playing solitaire and watching the news. You know, that's all he does. He never reads anything. And he read my book and liked it and fell in love with the character. And that right there was, I couldn't have a bigger thrill than that. I mean, you could have signed me up for a New York Times bestseller and it wouldn't have been any more enjoyable for me than my dad reading the book. So.
You know, my stepmother actually read my whole first book to my dad. And he really enjoyed it. And so yeah, you know, we do. It's great to have our parents. Both my parents really enjoyed my books. So yeah, you know, you can't entertain your family. You know, people are very, very important to you, you know, so. All right, Scott, what about you?
Well, I didn't set out with any sort of message either. My initial interest was telling a story that would hopefully entertain, just like Tom said. But as it turns out, there is an underlying moral issue in the tale, simply because it involves these two very powerful families that both are taking care of this, try not to give too much away, secret duty, if you want to call it that. The way I have it in the blurb is they're basically protecting humanity from a threat that it doesn't know exists, that kind of thing, you know. But they both go about it two different ways. And that was important to me, to have these two families. They're rivals, but they're both trying to achieve the same goal. They're just trying to do it in two different ways. One way, which I would consider to be morally superior to the other. So you get that different presentation, and it allows you, or allows the reader, I hope, to sort of explore those two options and make you think to themselves how it would apply to them, or how they would feel in a similar situation. So it does bring forward this message, or this presentation of a choice, if you will, if you're willing to go that way as you read it.
Great. You know, and I think sometimes when we write, I know when I go back and reread books, there's things that I pick up that I never picked up before, or I find little messages in there, and sometimes the author didn't even intend for the messages. So it's kind of like looking at a painting. Everybody picks up something different, or something resonates with them. So, you know, a lot of times we start out, we just want to entertain, and then before we know it, like I think Tom said, go back and read, and you go, did I write that? You know, so that's the fun part. It's like, I don't remember writing that, but that's really cool. Okay, so your book and your characters. Which character in your story is maybe one of your favorites that, you know, and I don't know if you guys managed to find an excerpt or anything about your character, or if there's something cool things you can tell us about your character that you just, you know, mostly associate within the story. Do you do you have a favorite?
Yeah, a whole lot of them. Yeah, I actually thought about that one quite a bit. It's a little difficult choice for me. Well, this is going to sound arrogant, but there's a lot of characters in my book that I really enjoy. And I've been told by different people they really like them. But the protagonist is this young woman, and she's my favorite character. And it was very interesting to write her because, for starters, she's from Finland. And so I received a lot of input from a young Finnish woman to give me some insight in not only writing a female character, but learning about Finnish culture and how someone that had grew up in that culture would react to certain situations. And I also have this thing about rare books of power. One of my influences is H.P. Lovecraft. And so what I did was I have these 3 books that are very, very important. And there are these different forces that are trying to get a hold of these 3 books. and some of them are trying to do it for various reasons that may not be too good, and vice versa. Well, it just so happens that one of these books sits in this library of this very prestigious university in Europe, and the young woman from Finland is in charge of that collection. She doesn't know about the book, or she knows about the book, but she doesn't realize the import of it. And so that whole thing just kind of, I got to get inside that character's head and write what I felt was an interesting character, because, why is she, because the book doesn't take place, or my story doesn't take place in Finland. So why is she here? Why isn't she at her home? How did she get to this point? And all the things that led her to this place. And right in the beginning of the story, she's walking home late at night, and a very large person jumps out of an alleyway, grabs hold of her to try to pull her into an alley to do things to her that aren't very pleasant. And it just so happens that she also is very adept in martial arts and self-defense. And so it shows how she gets out of that situation and how she handles it and what she does. And so it was just really exciting for me to take that one character and explore all the various things that she could do and how she can affect the story when she almost just finds herself immersed in this plot without even realizing what's going on.
That's interesting that you said Finland, because I'm actually half Finnish, and I can swear in Finn.
Oh, I've learned some too now.
But is that a good thing?
Well, it's they don't swear quite like we do, but my grandparents were hilarious, and when my grandma was mad at my grandpa, the Finn would come out, the Finnish language would come out. So, but well, it looks like we have 10 minutes left, so let's get right into Tom and see what he has to say about his favorite character.
Well, like he said, I like a lot of our characters, and I even like some of them I've already killed. So it's kind of hard to say, but I guess overall the favorite would be the protagonist, which is Barrick. And I think the reason I like Barrick so much is Barrick is what I always wished I was like. Barrick is 6'6", 250 pounds with a heart of gold. And he's bigger than everybody else. He can beat down anybody he wants to, but he's really very gentle and kind. And his attitude is always jovial, and that's what I try to keep in there. He's very well known for his belly laughs. So it's just I think that's where the prejudice thing came in, was my way I deal with prejudice kind of came through to him when he was dealing with that. And someone asked him in the first book, someone asked him why he didn't get mad because the way people were looking at him. And he goes, why should I? They're just people. He said, whether they got fur and sharp teeth, short and long beards, dark skin and pointed ears, makes no difference. Whether they're cleaning the streets after the horses or they're sitting on the throne, they're the same. We're all the same. We're all just people. And then that person says, you must be a saint. He starts out with his belly laugh. Saint? No. He says, I like wine, women, and sitting in the tavern. So no, I'm not a saint, but people are people, So he's got his vices, but his attitude is one that I think is infectious to those that are around him. And I guess that's the way I always wanted to be. I wanted to have that infectious attitude.
Well, and that's true, because that really makes, we talk about this before on our shows, what makes the character believable, and our characters, they can't, we spoof the characters with the glinting perfect teeth and the perfect language, and they don't ever do anything wrong, and we just laugh at them because that's not reality. People are not like that. So, we tend to gravitate towards our characters that have the most strange mannerisms, or it's just things that make them stand out and make them believable. The funnier they are, or I mean, if they have a tick in their cheek or something strange, like, so we have few minutes yet. Why don't you guys tell us what you got next in the works? Go ahead, Scott.
Well, as I said, I was finishing up the editing of the second book. I'll be submitting it very, very soon. The third book's already started, and I'll get on that one. So, and I don't know if there will be more after the third. I have considered and started working on a few short stories that take place within the world that I've built. And I might do that. And I'm also working on some other potential novels right now. One facet of fiction that's always been something I've really liked is vampires. And I actually have one novel finished that needs to be edited up, and I have another one started. They're not related at all. They just both have to do with vampires. And I just thought that would be an interesting thing to explore. So there's a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak. The real challenge right now is staying focused on one, getting it to a point where at least I'm done with it and I can hand it off to an editor or a publisher, and moving on to the next, instead of trying to sort of simultaneously work on 4 or 5 at the same time. That doesn't really work too well.
I'm guilty. I have so many things that I'm going through, but yeah. Well, what about you, Tom?
I think after I finished this book, I've had several works in progress, I guess you call them, or just things sitting out there that I could work on. Some of it sci-fi, some of it fantasy, some of it modern day. But I think what I want to try is something from first-person point of view rather than third-person omnipotent that I've been using. So I've got a story I think I'm going to be working on about a man that's in a dead-end job as an insurance investigator. He's bitter. His wife and child were lost in a tornado, and he's going to get caught up with the FBI in an investigation that's going to take him all around the country in investigating disasters that keep happening. And that's just kind of where it'd be kind of a story of redemption and rejuvenation and learning to have a will to live again, I think.
That sounds great. Yes, sometimes it's fun to deviate from what we normally do. So, well, you guys, I guess we got a few minutes left. So I just want to thank both of you for being here today, and all of you readers. Remember to check out Scott and Tom's books. They sound fascinating, and have fun at Virtual Fantasy Con. And if you don't know what it is, it's on Facebook. All you have to do is type in Virtual Fantasy Con 2016, and it's there, and it runs for 8 days. So I just want to thank you guys for being here, and it was a great time, and we look forward to your next projects. Bye, everybody.